Hello, this is Aaron West. I am the author of the A24 New Wave. In this book, I look at A24's output and I make the argument that we are in a new wave movement right now. A24 plays a major role. This book has a supplemental podcast where each episode is a brief conversation about an A24 related topic, whether an actor, director, or even a genre. As I continue research for the book and conduct interviews, I expect to record podcast episodes with people involved with the company. You can find the podcast at cinejourneys.com or wherever you find podcasts, and we are proud to be members of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love? Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface-level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind-the-scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, the Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, and let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.
Are you a film fan who loves the ultimate home video experience? Look no further than The Disconnected. Your host, Ryan Verrill, is your go-to source for the latest and most accurate information on home video releases, exclusive interviews with industry insiders and filmmakers, and has established a thriving community where every film and physical media enthusiast feels welcome. From hidden gems to blockbuster hits, The Disconnected brings you insider knowledge and a welcoming space to share your love of cinema. Watch every Thursday night at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific for the live announcements show and follow The Disconnected on social media to stay updated. Subscribe to The Disconnected on YouTube or on the podcast provider of your choice and dive into a world where every movie night is an adventure.
Welcome to The Shabby Detective, yet another Columbo podcast. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me, of course, is Mr. Chris Dashew.
Surely you can't be serious. I'm sorry. Is there anything that he's in that doesn't make you think of the funnier things that he's in? Leslie Nielsen, just like taking him seriously is a hard time, right?
I'm okay with taking him seriously.
I'm okay with taking him seriously, but it's hard when all you've seen is Lieutenant Frank Drebin of Police Squad.
On this episode, we are talking about Lady in Waiting. Lady in Waiting.
Hey, lady!
It is the 5th episode of the first season, written by Stephen Bochco from a story by Barney Slater, directed by the one and only Norman Lloyd. Geez, we were just speaking about Orson Welles. There's a connection there. And also starring Susan Clark as Beth Chadwick, also known as Webster's mom. I think that's where most people know her from. Richard Anderson as Bryce Chadwick, also known as Steve Austin's boss, or for Chris and I, he's also known as the Night Strangler.
You know, I saw Kolchak fighting a guy who looked like this, who pretended to be the Ripper. Wasn't David Warner.
That's right. Yeah, he was the one that lived under Seattle.
Right,
and
the Seattle tunnels.
Would come out every, however many years and get those pineal glands or whatever. Very Victor Toombs.
Seattle Underground. I'm telling you, man, somebody needs to just go back and mine that again. That is such a cool setting.
I'm surprised there's not a found footage movie about that. Probably is. This episode aired December 15th, 1971. Kind of an unusual episode. We start off with a whole brother and sister thing going on here where Beth is being dominated by her older brother, Bryce, and he really wants to break up her relationship with Peter Hamilton, played by Leslie Nielsen. He thinks that Peter is just in it for the money, tries to break those two up, and what does Beth do? Well, she's been plotting this for a little while, but she manages to knock off her brother after an extended fantasy sequence of, this is how I'm going to murder my brother while I sit in bed and eat bonbons.
This is the first time that this show has ever felt like it was 75 minutes. It's a little unfortunate.
Yeah, it's a little long in the tooth. I will agree.
The setup takes way too long. There is a sequence where she's setting up the murder, and then there's a sequence where she's in bed, like you mentioned, and then she cuts to a dream sequence of what she's going to do. Mind you, it would have been smart that that was just what ends up happening, and they could have left it at that. Instead, that's a fake out, and so then what actually happens. So you get 10 minutes of a fake sequence, which you think might be real, and then 10 more minutes of the real sequence that is real. It ends up having to exist so that Columbo can find certain things out.
And boy, oh boy, they lay on that fact of, this is a dream sequence so heavy. It's like you can barely see what's going on.
They filmed it on the other side of a pane of glass with water. It's like, it's that bad. I know that this show has done some things with interesting camera work. Robert Culp's glasses. This is not that. This is so bad. It is what I think of when I think of this being done poorly. It's a standout example of how not to do a dream sequence, because not only is it infuriating because we know it's a dream sequence that they don't do anything with, it's half impossible to see what's going on.
And they end up using a lot of the shots from the dream sequence in the reality sequence. I guess that's to kind of throw us off a little bit about, hey, this is going perfectly to plan. But of course, it doesn't go to plan. What happens? Well, Peter shows up and he's about to read Bryce the riot act. Bryce manages to remember that there's a spare key instead of being locked out and then trying to come in through the bedroom window and getting shot, which is her plan. Instead, he just finds the spare key and comes in and says, hey, why didn't you respond when I was calling for you? And then she just cold-blooded murders him. And then turns on the alarm system, and it is that cart before the horse that is really going to be her undoing.
The singular undoing. Singular undoing is the alarm. This is the bullshit that I don't like that this show has now done twice, and it didn't really work the first time, and now it really doesn't work, because they're making Columbo feel like a dummy.
Well, Columbo knows right off the bat. As soon as he comes in, as soon as we see him,
he already knows. He knows. His voice knows from off screen. You're checking the news, or is he reading the news, Columbo? It's like, this is fucking it. I knew that the newspaper had to factor into it somehow, as I'm sure you did, because they laid it on thick, really thick. This is almost like Baby's First Columbo Part 2. It's in a lot of ways, they are doing a lot of hand-holding for the audience that I don't appreciate.
You're right. This is very Columbo 101.
Not bad. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, I've seen the show already really operate in a nuanced way. And when it does, there are some like minor changes they could have made here to make this a lot more nuanced. And they kind of just, for whatever reason, just decided to not do them. I don't know if it was just because again, it's Stephen Bochco. Like, it's not like he doesn't know what he's doing. He laid out the story. I mean, the teleplay is not by him, but the story is by him. So the framework was a Bochco idea, and we know that he knows what he's doing. Jesus Christ, if anyone knows what they're doing other than Lincoln Levinson, it's Steve Bochco, right?
This one, I think we're really supposed to sympathize with the murderer, which we'll get more as we go on. There will be some murderers where we will really sympathize with them, or Columbo will sympathize probably even more than us as the audience will sympathize with these murderers. But with this one, Bryce is kind of a dick, and I don't really cry when he gets murdered, but she just kind of goes off the deep end. She really wants to assert herself as her own woman, and really she should be able to do that without murdering her brother. But that's her way of doing it, even though she already had stuff planned beforehand. And that's one of the other major, clues is when that new car arrives and he's just like, oh, you just got this today? And they're like, oh no, you had to order it weeks ago. And he's like, oh, weeks ago. Okay.
I want to believe that the attempt at painting her character was one of a woman being oppressed who takes her own life into her own hands and makes a decision. But the way they wrote the character is not that. They did not write a nuanced character. And I feel like, because the character doesn't feel nuanced, the character feels as one-dimensional as humanly possible. And in feeling one-dimensional, the character is those worst things of that role typified, which is a catty, bitchy woman that you cannot sympathize with at all. Because I find her almost impossible to sympathize with. Yes, we don't get to see Richard Anderson really abuse her, but we do get to see her act like a complete fucking psycho and do exactly what the mother said she was going to do. Because you do get this sense that, and they say it in the episode, they're like, she doesn't know how to keep control of her own life. She has her own pre-existing problems that maybe Richard Anderson was helping keep in check. Again, we're not given that side of the story in this episode. In some of the episodes, we've been given kind of both sides. And I feel like this episode actually would have worked better if they had done what you were talking about, which was give her a character we can feel bad for, because we haven't seen that character yet in the show. We haven't seen that character yet who were like, we genuinely feel bad for you, and we understand that this course of action, while terrible, is your only course of action, at least you believe, to get out of the situation that you're in. But the character that they paint of Richard Anderson, that's not it. That's not what it is. It's painted a lot broader, so it's a lot less specific. It's very vague. It could be he's abusing her, or she could be completely unable to be controlled and can't control her own impulses. So there are people that are like that need someone in their life to rein in their worst impulses to the point where maybe they help that person learn how to do it themselves. But there are people that are like that. They're not nuanced enough to have written that character in this episode.
And the whole twist of Leslie Nielsen actually really caring about her and not being a gold digger, and
he's a good dude.
Yeah, exactly. And so he starts to get concerned when she goes all out and starts spending lavishly, does her whole, the hair, the makeup, all that stuff, and then just goes nuts at the salon, just buying all these different clothes to the point where he's just like, this isn't my bag. I want to leave. And she's like, no, you have to stay. You have to see me try on all these things. It's like, you are totally frivolous right now. I understand, like, if you just got out from under somebody else's thumb, you want to celebrate. You want to get the new haircut. You want to get the new clothes. You want to be the new person. But yeah, she's just, I don't know. I don't ever really feel for her. And then it's funny, when I was describing this episode to my wife, I was like, Susan Clark, the big hat. So at the end, at the boardroom sequence, that big fucking hat, man. Oh my God.
Well, the get-ups that she puts on in this episode are just, again, I get what they're trying to do. I get what they're trying to highlight, and I get what point they're trying to make. I just think it fails woefully, because it's like, you've gone from one direction to the other without ever stopping in between for anything. And it's like, you cannot oscillate that hard, because it's fucking whiplash. Now the character's just like, the character was sympathetic before, but you've gone so far in the other direction, they're beyond unsympathetic. They're just obnoxious and terrible. And there was never a moment where it was like, they believe that they were actually being abused. Now it's just like, no, I think you're just gaslighting yourself. Like, you're convincing yourself of shit that's not really happening. That's my perception, is that she actually is terrible and he's not terrible. And that's not me as like a guy saying that, because I can't sympathize with the female point of view. That's the episode's writers being lazy and not giving us a way to really empathize with Susan Clark's character, because they make her so unbelievably unlikable that from the moment she's dealing with Columbo, you're just like, you're terrible. And you are genuinely just awful.
Well, it's like, you can't really sympathize with anybody in this episode except maybe Leslie Nielsen. But like, the mom comes in, and the mom obviously is very upset because the daughter killed the son. And here's the mom showing up. And initially it's pretty funny. She's got this little yippy dog. She thinks that Columbo works for her and is like, oh, go grab my bags out of the taxi and pay the man.
There's like a whole missed identity scene.
That's probably the best scene of this episode, I think, is him just trying to negotiate with the cab driver. How much is it? $10.50. I've only got $11. Keep the change.
I liked that scene a lot. The problem with this episode, it feels like it's spinning. It felt like that was unnecessary and spinning its wheels.
There's a lot of padding to this episode.
But the padding is the better part of the episode. The scene that I really liked, similar to the one that you liked, is the scene where they go to another one of these like places we're not normally seeing characters in this show, which is like out in the world. Columbo and Leslie Nielsen like at the drive-thru. That was great. I mean, you have them kind of out just being normal, doing normal people things, and Columbo is, being his normal kind of cross-examining self, and Leslie Nielsen's like, I'm just here to eat a burger and a Mighty Malt without whip. Sort of sick bastard doesn't get whip on his Mighty Malt. I was trying to figure out what that place was that they were eating at. Again, like very much like I love the setting of the show. Was disappointed it wasn't a bowl of Burt's chili, but take what you can get.
Food is very important to this show, especially to Columbo.
Those burgers did not look appetizing. I just want to talk about that for a second. Those looked terrible. I wanted to figure out where it was because I wanted to know if that place was genuinely that bad as a restaurant. Because at one point, Leslie Nielsen looks like he's eating just 2 buns. Buns with nothing in between. I was like, what the hell are they eating?
Well, there's that whole weird thing, too, where you don't want to eat on camera because you're going to have to, like, spit it out and take another bite and have the whole continuity of the burger. I mean, the interview I just did with Paul Dooley where he was talking about how he had a rubber hamburger as Wimpy and Popeye, and he would palm it and had this whole thing where it looked like he was chewing on a hamburger, but he just had a fake burger with him the whole time.
When people think about acting and like the thing that actors do, it's like, it's so easy. It's like, I don't think you really realize when people are being asked to do the most commonplace things, when people give a shit, they want to make sure that it doesn't look weird. Like the burger is magically popping in and out. Like, there's a bite. Now there's not. There's a bite. Now there's not. Cinema Sins 101 Things Wrong with this episode of Columbo. We found them, folks. We're going to do that episode next, Columbo Sins. I like Leslie Nielsen, like I was kind of joking around at the opening of this. Like, I do not consider Leslie Nielsen a serious actor. But that's because Leslie Nielsen is the most serious, funny actor of all time. You've seen the interviews where he's like, doesn't understand why any of it's funny. The fact that the guy who plays fucking Frank Drebin in Naked Gun didn't get what made Naked Gun funny is why Naked Gun is funny. That's why it's one of the funniest movies of that kind of all time. It's one of the best cop movies ever made, and it's a fucking parody. It is a full-on 100% parody. And yet, I would think it's, Lieutenant Frank Drebin is just as memorable as Columbo, and yet they operate in completely different spaces. But then you have Leslie Nielsen in this being kind of endearing. Again, like, Columbo is endearing to the audience in a way that Peter Falk can be. And then you have Leslie Nielsen, who when he plays a cop, he's endearing. But it's interesting because I expected his character to be really terrible. I was expecting him to not be endearing, but he's super endearing in this episode. It's very strange.
He's what ultimately undoes her because Columbo knows that he can appeal to his honesty and to his logic. We don't even get to see that on screen, which is interesting, that they cut away from the whole cart before the horse thing. And off we go to the whole, we're back at the scene of the crime again. And here we have the 3rd time that we go through this, even to the point where they're doing like flash cuts of Richard Anderson instead of Columbo coming through that door.
I think I would have liked the end of the episode more if the beginning of the episode hadn't been so bad. They were trying to do something stylistically interesting at the end of the episode with the cutting. And I think like I wanted to like that, but I think they had kind of pushed me away so far with that dream sequence where it was like, I don't trust that you can nail this. And they kind of nailed it at the end. I don't know. This is the first episode where we're supposed to think Columbo's in danger. There are a lot of firsts in this episode. First time we've kind of had a really sympathetic third person in the episode. Like Leslie Nielsen is the first time we have like a sympathetic person, because we had that episode where it was Eddie Albert and the woman, but she's like being taken in by him. In this, it's like the opposite, right? He's not being taken in by her. She promotes him and he's like, you know that this is a bad idea, right? He is a almost faultless character, which again is kind of an interesting, they kind of use this episode as their first time doing that, but I wanted to like the end. I couldn't bring myself to like it after how poorly they nailed the beginning of the episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the best parts of this for me were like Inquest, the coroner's inquest, where you get to see John Lormer as the judge or whatever his title is in an inquest. I mostly know him from he is Bedelia's father in the Creepshow segment Father's Day, who's there with the cane. I want my cake. And then also Marcia Wallace showing up and whispering little things about astrology to Columbo about Jupiter and Venus are in good aspect with Pluto.
And he's just like, he's sitting there like me when I hear that now. I'm just like, sure. Yeah, whatever makes you happy. Another Creepshow connection, Mr. Leslie Nielsen is in Creepshow.
He can hold his breath for a very long time.
Another kind of more serious role for Leslie Nielsen. I love Leslie Nielsen as an actor. I really do. Even though I've only seen him in comedic stuff. His face is so endearing. That's why he's called Funny Face. Come on.
I'm surprised you haven't seen, what was it, Forbidden Planet. He almost doesn't look like him in Forbidden Planet because he doesn't have any gray in his hair. The other thing I like about this episode, oddly enough, is the music. I really like that do-do-do-do-do theme that they're doing through so much of it. Like when he's pulling away from the drive-thru and the waitress is yelling at him.
Hey, mister, your tray.
Well, that was going to be pretty obvious since she said, don't forget the tray.
I love those characters, though. Like, those are the better characters of this episode, are just like the weird, idiosyncratic human beings that live in the world of Columbo. You know, like the mom. Like, the mom is great. She's super fucking weird. You know, when she walks in and she's like, you know, you finally did it. It's like, God damn, like, you understand she's been waiting for this moment to happen. Because that's, for me as the audience, that was me cluing me in that, like, Susan Clark is terrible. Like, there have been problems. But I love that mom character because she's just she is a force of nature the moment she walks in. Here, take my, pay for that. It's like, okay. I love Columbo just goes along with it. He just doesn't give a shit.
Of course, before he leaves, he was just like, it was $11.
Should I get reimbursed? Like, what the fuck? You're such an ass, Columbo. Jesus Christ.
Well, just give me your card and I'll send you a check. Yeah, I'm all out of cards. And then his whole thing with the light bulb where he's like, this is a 100-watt bulb. You know, these things should last for 800 hours. And he just starts doing the math on how many days it should be out there and that the bulb is all clean and it's clean as a whistle. I'm just like, oh, that's great.
There is a lot of that kind of back and forth with Susan Clark where it's like, here, it's back, volley back and forth. He goes, well, I'm here looking at the pot that had the key in it that he found. And there's like this mummified thing. And she's like, well, I put it there and I took it out. And he's like, okay, because that's the thing we kind of haven't mentioned. They did not find her at fault for her brother's murder, which is the thing we kind of haven't mentioned. So that essentially we have Columbo trying to verify that she did it, even though for all intents and purposes, the court has said she didn't. The stakes are kind of strange in this episode too. This is a very weird episode.
And I did make sure that it was an inquest, so it wasn't really a trial. So it's not like she's being tried for the murder because of that whole double jeopardy thing.
They're just like, was it an accident or not?
So yeah, he can overturn that. And then when I was thinking about Peter as well and this whole thing of him helping out Columbo, I was thinking all the way back to Prescription Murder and the whole thing with the woman that was helping out Gene Barry and her finding out what a shit Gene Barry is. And that's when, she helps him out, helps out Columbo. And this is kind of like, once Leslie Nielsen is like, you announced our engagement. It's like, I don't even think that he had proposed to her, but she just announces, oh, we're engaged at the board meeting.
He's like, yeah, I'm really excited to hear it. I would have liked to have heard it first when you made the decision. Like I said, I like that Leslie Nielsen is like the faultless character here. Like, he is a pure soul in this episode. And I like that, because that's an interesting character. We haven't seen that yet. Because, yeah, the closest we got was in the Gene Barry episode. But she helped him. Like, she was still at fault. She was trying to absolve herself, atone for her own sins. Leslie Nielsen just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, because he was going there anyways.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because we're going to see Leslie Nielsen again in Columbo. And the role that he plays is also not necessarily, he's not really the villain, if memory serves, in that episode. So kind of strange that he never got a chance to play the heavy in one of these.
When is he in Columbo again? Is it before, like, Naked Gun?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
well, that would be why, right? Because, I mean, Leslie Nielsen, he's just a character actor, right? Who just happens to be, I guess, his only role that I think most people know him for. It's either Airplane or Naked Gun or Scary Movie, I guess, but...
Right. Yeah, all of those.
Spy Hard.
Wrongfully accused. But yeah, the next one is 1975 in an episode called Identity Crisis, which is another strange episode. It'll be a few years before we talk about it, but we'll have to cast our mind back to when we saw Peter Hamilton
as the faultless love of Susan Clark. I feel like this episode made some really key missteps, and that's what's keeping me from really liking it, because I do like the setup. I like the idea of it's already like put to bed. I like that idea of she's just like fucking furious. Like, this motherfucker won't leave me alone.
Oh, yeah. She loses her shit twice.
I like that. Like, I like this idea of like, yo, I got away with it. I got away with it. Leave me alone. I like that. I really like how much of a persistent dickhead Columbo is. He's a character who we've been shown now. It's like in the X-Files. At some point, it's like, would you fucking believe Fox Mulder? Because like he's been right how many times now? I'm that way with this show now. We're like 5 episodes into this show, and I'm like, Columbo has been right every single time. So if you don't believe him, you're the dummy. And I like that idea in this episode of like, he's the persistent hound dog who will not let well enough alone. I like that. They just fucking didn't nail it. They missed so many key things. I was like 2 or 3, really. They kind of missed those so badly that it's like...
I mean, I have to say, I would watch this episode over Dead Weight, the Eddie Albert one. But this is definitely not one I go back to. Like, if this one comes on TV, it's like, I can probably do other things. You know, I'll come in for like the good Columbo parts, but... Like you said, you feel those 75 minutes pretty good.
I don't think we've really said so far in the run of this show, and we're almost 10 episodes into our show and like 5 episodes into the show itself. I haven't felt anything drag as much as this. And I think it really just goes to that kind of dual dream than reality thing that eats up like 30 minutes of the episode. It's just, I don't know what else you needed to say about the intro, but you didn't need to set it up 5 times over. Because they had to set it up so many times to then undo it every time when Columbo's like, but what about this? And she has an answer. What about this? And she has an answer. The other thing that I didn't appreciate is how many times they did that felt a little excessive. It's like a fake out every time because it's like, well, you think he's going to get her with this? And it's not that, it's something else. But you can't do that like 5 times. That's a little much.
Well, and she's not as slick as other killers.
No, not even as much as the author.
Right. She's not, oh God, Jack Cassidy. Yeah. You ask him anything. He's just like, I'm so disappointed in you, Lieutenant, for not thinking of this. You know, old Mrs. Melville would have thought of that, but you, poor, simple Columbo. And Columbo's doing his usual thing of playing the schlub and everything, but it doesn't feel like people are necessarily not taking him seriously in this one. Like, it feels like he and Susan Clark are almost on a level playing field. Like, you know, as far as the way that she thinks that he's probably as smart as she is, rather than this guy's an idiot and I'm super smart. Like, she's not super smart. She just was tired of what was going on and took matters into her own hand, thought she had a very foolproof plan, and it immediately was undone. So everything that she has done has just been patchwork over patchwork over patchwork.
I mean, to quote Matt Lillard from Scream, let's face it, Susan Clark is no Lee Grant. I mean, that's what they're going for, right? Is that there's been all of one other female villain in this show, and it was Lee Grant.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a dearth of female villains as we go along.
Sure.
Here.
This one is not memorable at all.
There's 2 other women that jump to mind, Joyce Van Patten and Ruth Gordon. Know that there are other ones, but those are the 2 that just pop into my mind as far as being other female killers. But for the most part, it is going to be a lot of dudes.
That's the way it was in the industry. And that's the way, in a lot of ways, it still is.
Personally, I don't think that Lincoln Levinson or Falk liked having female villains. And it wasn't because of a sexism thing. It was basically like, let's show up these men for being assholes, and like the whole thing of Susan Clark, she's not really hurting for money. She ends up taking over this company, yada, yada. But it's not like, and they make remarks about how, opulent the house is. She's got 2 servants, all this kind of stuff. But again, it doesn't feel like she's living high on the hog until after her brother dies. And even then, it doesn't feel, it feels like she's going on a shopping spree, but they're not saying like Bill is. It's not like, oh my God, you spent $10,000 on clothes or something.
Right.
So it's not like, somebody who, I think even next month when we talk, it's much more of I'm going to take over the company because I'm a rich brat and I have emotional problems. So a lot different than the Susan Clark character is.
Again, I think that's the problem. They just don't nail her character. And in this show, as we've seen, just like Kolchak, this show really is as good as its villains. It's like Batman. It's like Perry Mason. It's like, because of how heavily weighted in the direction of the villains it is, when the villains are bad, it is like Batman. Like when Batman's villains are bad, you don't give a shit what Batman's doing. It's just, there's no stakes. And in this, they failed Susan Clark because she's not a bad actress. They just gave her nothing to work with. They really just gave her nothing to work with. They said, well, she's not a bratty bitch. Okay, she's not that. And she's not a spendaholic money waster. She's not that either. So she'll be in between, and in taking a stand in neither direction, she's flat. Very flat. And you can tell that it's just Columbo in any other episode would run circles around her, and they have to dumb his ass down to make it believable that he could, be tricked by, be outwitted by her. It feels like, if you really want the honest opinion of what this episode feels like, Columbo playing with his food. If you look at it that way, it's like Columbo's just like, just keep fucking whatever, wiggling your way out. But you don't realize like you're in a jar already. You're just wiggling out. The lid's already been closed. Like it's too late. Like you said, it's too late by the time he's there. This episode almost is like, it's frustrating that he doesn't just like end it now. The jig is up.
If folks want to see better Susan Clark performances, I would say check out Coogan's Bluff. Check out Colossus the Vorbin Project. Check out Night Moves. I mean, there are so many better things that she was in. One of my favorite movies, The North Avenue Regulars. There's a lot of good performances she did, but in this one, the performance is decent, but the writing just let her down.
The people involved with the writing of the episode know what they're doing. And this is this is the first season of the show. Most things this season have been pretty good. Rather good. Really good, even.
Well, one of the problems, too, just kind of to pull back the curtain a little bit. So this is the 5th episode of the first season. Peter Falk had been promised a director's position before the end of the first season. At this point, there's one more episode, and he's not getting the call, like, start working on your next episode, start working on that directing gig. So he's basically telling, and apparently he was very nice about it. He told Norman Lloyd, the director, and he told Susan Clark, his co-star, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be sick quite a bit during this. And he would actually just leave. He started to come in later and later every single day. And at one point he just was like, I'm out of here. I'm leaving because the network's fucking around with me. And he was just pulling this like star bullshit kind of stuff. And finally, Universal's like, okay, yeah, we'll give you an episode, but it has to be one more episode this season. There's this whole ticking clock of him going to Broadway and working on Prisoner of Second Avenue. And so he's like, okay, I want to direct. I guess I'll give you one more episode. So that's how Blueprint for Murder shows up at the very end. So we've got next month, we'll talk about Short Fuse. In 2 months, we'll talk about Blueprint for Murder. And meanwhile, in this episode, he just keeps fucking around and walking off. So I'm surprised it happened.
I've never asked you, and this has never come up anytime we've ever talked on your show, my show, or anything. How do you personally feel about that? I know it's case to case, obviously.
Yeah, sometimes you have to play that card if you want to get what you want. Falk is no dummy. He realizes, hey, this is what's going on. As long as he was telling his co-stars, his director, what the score is, like, hey, please don't be offended, but I need to do this. I know some people weren't very happy with him. I think Susan Clark was not happy with him, but I think Norman Lloyd, he'd been in the business at this point 50 some years. I think he's just like, yeah, you got to do what you got to do. Pull the card, man. Do the star card and do whatever you need to do.
I think for me, as the way I look at it kind of broadly, and I think this applies most of the time, if you're not known for doing it, I don't see an issue doing it because it's like anything else. Your business where you work, your title gives you a certain level of ability that it doesn't. There are certain intangible things you're given that other people aren't given their position. Being an actor on a TV show where you are the star is no different. It's even, in a lot of ways, it's like being the CEO of a company. That fucking show revolves around one guy. Again, I have no problem with it as long as you're not the person who abuses it, which there are so many of them. The problem is the people who abuse it make it bad for the people who won't do it once or twice. That, you're being a star and you're, all that. And it's like, well, sometimes, like you said, sometimes you have to. Sometimes you don't have another choice. Sometimes the studios are run by human beings, and most of the time, really pulling back the curtain, those human beings don't know what the fuck they're doing. And they don't even have any experience in TV. Shocking, people who work in the industry, a lot of them have no experience in the industry. They're there for the wrong reasons. Shocking. Especially in TV. TV's real bad.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of the stuff that Falk is doing helps later on when it comes to other stars and really helping them negotiate things. That's what my hope is behind all of this.
Same here. Guilds exist to protect actors. Guilds exist to protect writers and directors and everybody, but their protection only goes so far, even if there is perceived or real protection. And at some point, you do have to, quote, go, as they say in wrestling, go into business for yourself. And in a lot of ways, I really can't fault someone for making a decision that benefits them because, put me in the same position, can't tell me I might not do it as well. And you know what? Peter Falk, we mentioned this before, he didn't really want to do this show. He didn't want to be a regular on TV. He didn't like working on TV, right?
He had done that Trials of O'Brien and thought that he was going to get the shit end of the stick. He worked like a madman on that. So this whole thing of the wheel helped him as far as you're not going to be doing this show every week.
It's like 7 episodes,
Also promising him good salary, promising him things like the chance to direct. So you got to make good on your promises.
Honest to God, if I were working in the industry right now, like trying to figure out a way to maximize content variety, I would go back to the wheel. Like you could get stars of like a caliber that would not work on TV otherwise if you could be like, we need you for like 5 episodes. But we're going to do that with 5 different people and we'll get 25 episodes out of it. And it'll be like, why are they not why are they not doing this? Like, I don't understand. Are there not working actors? Are there not people with money to throw at this kind of shit? Does content needs not exist? Because like this kind of stuff for me feels like a home run. You're telling me that the world doesn't need more murder mystery type shows? Because I feel like these things are coming back too. You're looking at stuff that's coming back out. And I think, what's the Steve Martin short? Is it Ted Danson with Selena Gomez?
Murders in This Building or something?
Right. Fairly popular show, but it kind of harkens to shows like this, or Murder, She Wrote, which I just started watching. I wanted to bring that up because of this show, which I like that show. I was bummed to find out there was never a crossover. Not with this show. There's a crossover with Magnum P.I., which is just, what? Sure. Things I didn't know I needed. Angela Lansbury and Tom Selleck together in their primes. All right. But I can see when I was watching that show, I can see so much of the DNA of this show. They made a conscious decision in Murder, She Wrote to say, this is what we did in Columbo. We're going to do it differently here. And I like that it's a more traditional show, but I like that this is the show where they were like, we're not going to be traditional. This is very much a different kind of show. And I can watch that show and this show and be like, these are the same sides of this, like different heads of the same coin. And I like that. It actually makes me appreciate Columbo a lot more because I'm like, that is the Lincoln Levinson more traditional show. Angela Lansbury feels like Columbo. She feels like just as whip smart, probably smarter. It's that thing where like the way Columbo's being presented is not, Angela Lansbury, the platinum, whatever, like best-selling author. So
kind of a doddering old lady.
Yeah, but again, it's like I like to see, because again, like it makes me appreciate Columbo more because they really do take chances with this show. And they do some different things stylistically, like Murder, She Wrote's very straightforward. I appreciate that because this show isn't.
If Columbo is Poirot, then Jessica Fletcher is Ms. Marple.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's that same kind of like they're in the same wavelength. They're just kind of one's at the top of one's at the peak and one's at the valley. They're doing the same thing, just going about it in different ways. But they're both very enjoyable. If you're listening to this and somehow you've never seen Murder, She Wrote, which I hadn't, then I would suggest checking it out, because if you're watching Columbo on Peacock, it's also on Peacock, and there's like 200 episodes. I mean, there's a lot of episodes of this, but there are. I mean, if you did a semi-regular episodic podcast on that show, you would be doing a podcast for like a fucking long time.
Well, I think there is at least one, I want to say, says something about Crabapple Cove, but I can't remember what it was. But I think for sure there's at least one, if not more, Murder, She Wrote podcasts out there.
We are one of many Columbo podcasts.
They are legion.
Yeah, boy, aren't they? There's so many Columbo food books. There's like 2 or 3. I think Columbo is probably more popular now than it ever has been, which is kind of wild. People are getting back into these kinds of shows. And, I think streaming services, as kind of terrible as a lot of it is, I kind of appreciate that they're giving people, if people want to watch content, there's plenty out there. And if you're finding stuff like this due to the pandemic or whatever, cool. Because this content really still hits, and it still has it's comfort content for me now. Like, I like this kind of stuff, and it's like comforting for me. Like, we watch Murder, She Wrote all the time because it's fun to put on in the background, check in with it every now and then. Jessica Fletcher is the motherly grandmother that, like, I think of like stereotype, just like I think of like, Columbo is like a stereotypical cop. So it's comforting content, but I just, as bad as this episode is, it's still pretty good for TV.
Chris, what are you up to?
Well, right now over the Culture Cast, my main movie podcast, we're talking about films with Rutger Hauer in them that don't happen to be Blade Runner. He was in more things. I know, shocking for some of you out there. But all those things and more, including Kolchak and the Barney Miller and Dreams for Sale, everything that I work on, cstachiw.com, cstachiw.com. That's my link tree. Go there. What about you, Mr. Mike White? What's going on over at the Projection Booth podcast?
Over here in August, it is a little bit of a grab bag again. We've got Japanese films like Black Lizard. We're talking about The Conformist and The Night Porter. Talking about Wise Blood, the John Huston film. And Chris, you're going to be on this month where we talk about the Gumball Rally and the Cannonball Run, sir.
And I believe that episode was requested, so geez.
It was, yeah. And you were even requested to be one of my co-hosts.
This person needs help. This person needs help. Whoever you are, send me $5. Send me your home address. I'll show up. Actually, I probably know who it is.
It was Andy Hendrickson. So I'm not sure if you know Andy or not.
I do.
All right.
I do.
Okay.
Cool. I'm excited to be on your show, as always. Just like I'm excited to talk about Columbo with you. Just like I'm excited to talk about Columbo or other things with the guy who does the music for our show.
That would be Mr. John Walker, as well as Mr. Colin Gallagher. So John Walker does our opening theme. Colin Gallagher does our closing theme, which you're about to hear in just a moment here. But before we play you out, definitely go on over to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a rating, give us a review. Definitely helps get the show out there. Like the world needs another Columbo podcast like a hole in the head.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror. We'll cover all the subgenres, so join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.